This video is sponsored by Wondershare's PDF Element for Mac. PDF Element is an all-in-one solution to give you everything you need to work with PDFs, whether that's PDF creation, editing existing PDFs, or even simply reading PDFs. PDF Element has got you covered. Wondershare is even offering a free $5 Amazon gift card to people who give them feedback on PDF Element. Check the links in the description for more. Hey guys, what's up? It's Kevin Schroff, and today we're going to install macOS Mojave in dual boot with Windows 10 on a Dell XPS 15 9570. And we're going to be doing this from the absolute beginning with every part detailed. Now, before we start, I'd like to mention that all the music used in this video has been produced by me under the name Nivek4s, and if you'd like to hear more of it, I'd appreciate if you could check it out. Links in the video description. Now, on with the video. First off, I'm going to replace the Wi-Fi card in my XPS 15. We must replace the Wi-Fi card because the stock Killer 1535 is not supported under macOS. The two cards we can choose from are the DW1830 or the DW1560, both of which are supported under macOS. The DW1830 is faster, but more costly. I have the DW1560, so that's what I'll be installing. Now would also be a good time to mention the fact that under macOS Hackintosh laptops, M.2 NVMe drives don't have the same power management capabilities as under Windows. This means an average decrease of around 10% in battery life under macOS on a Hackintosh laptop with an NVMe drive. This can be solved by replacing the NVMe drive with a SATA M.2 drive, which has proper power management under macOS Hackintosh laptops. Obviously, you would lose the speed benefits of NVMe, but if this is something that won't impact your workflow, then it can make sense replacing the drive with a SATA drive. In actual usage aside from benchmarks, I myself can't tell the difference between my Samsung 860 SATA SSD in my desktop and the magnitudes faster NVMe Toshiba XG5 in my XPS 15. I personally don't have a SATA M.2 drive on me right now, so I'll be using the stock NVMe Toshiba XG5 drive that the laptop came with. After unscrewing the bottom lid, we are now able to access the Wi-Fi card and SSD. Time to replace the Wi-Fi card with the DW1560. Now we will close and screw the lid back in. Before we do anything else, let's make a few BIOS adjustments. We need to ensure that we have the correct settings in the UEFI to prepare for macOS installation. Secure boot should be disabled, and SATA operation should be set to AHCI. Warning: if you have Windows currently installed and switch to AHCI, you may have boot up problems, so make sure you've backed up everything that you need, or be ready to mess around on Google in order to get back into Windows. I'm already in AHCI mode, so now I'm going to go back to Windows to start creating the macOS USB installer that we will need to install macOS. For this step, you need to have either access to a real Mac or run macOS in a virtual machine. The steps are the same for either of these, you just need access to one of them. I'll be using a virtual machine myself. After booting into macOS on my virtual machine, we're going to download a tool called Mojave Patcher by DOSDude. This tool allows us to get a complete download of the latest macOS Mojave DMG, which we will then turn into a macOS installer for our Hackintosh laptop. After downloading and launching the patcher, head to the menu bar, select Tools, and then select Download macOS Mojave. The tool will now download the completed DMG that we need. Save the download in the Applications folder. Once the patcher is done downloading, you can close the application and connect a USB to the machine and pass that through to the virtual machine by hitting VM Removable Devices and then finding your USB and selecting Connect. We need to format the USB first, so go ahead and open up Disk Utility. Select the USB drive and then format it as macOS Extended Journaled. Now we're going to create our USB macOS installer through the terminal. Open up the terminal and then type this in and hit enter. sudo /applications/install / macOS / Mojave.app /contents /resources /createinstallmedia /volume /volumes /untitled /no-interaction 2 ampersands say Mojave installer done. Or you can just copy and paste this from the description. The macOS installer will now start to be written to the USB. Whilst this is happening, we can prepare for the next steps by getting our files ready. Let's go and download Clover EFI, which is a bootloader that will allow us to run macOS on our Hackintosh laptop. Now that we've downloaded Clover, let's also download an EFI configuration folder for our XPS 15 9570. Luckily, the 9570 has several well-made EFIs available and that are constantly updated. The Lulettersoul EFI and Bavarian Cake EFIs are the best that I've tested, so read up on each and make your decision, or try them both out and see what works best for you. I'm downloading them both just to try out the updated version of the Bavarian Cake EFI, but I've normally used Lulettersoul's EFI, which has worked excellently for me. Off screen, I've checked that my USB installer has completed, so now that that's done, we can go ahead and install the Clover EFI bootloader onto the USB. Launch the Clover installer and make sure that the USB is selected as the destination. Select Clover for UEFI booting only, then hit install. Now that it's complete, go ahead and close the Clover window and navigate to the USB's EFI folder. Inside that is a Clover folder. We're going to delete this and copy and paste in its place the Clover folder from the EFI for our XPS 15 9570 we downloaded online. Now that that's done, let's safely eject the USB from macOS, power down the VM, and stick the USB into our Hackintosh laptop for macOS installation. Hit F12 while the laptop boots to get into the boot menu. Sometimes it won't show the USB on screen. If so, we can head into the BIOS and manually point to the Clover EFI boot file to get into Clover. Click boot sequence and then delete all other entries. Hit Add Boot option and then navigate to your USB drive. EFI folder, Clover folder, and then select Clover x64.efi and hit OK and apply. Now exit and get to the F12 boot menu again and select our newly made boot entry. As you can see, we've entered Clover. Navigate to macOS installer with the arrow keys and hit enter, and our Hackintosh will start booting the USB installer. Now before we install Mac, let's open up Disk Utility. I'm going to partition my SSD into a layout such that I have a partition for both Mac OS and Windows. For For the Windows partition, just select the format to be exFAT. We will format this later in the Windows installer to NTFS and install Windows over it. Use APFS for the macOS partition. Once you're satisfied, proceed installing macOS to the APFS partition you just made. The installation will now take around 20 minutes to finish, and will reboot in between and continue working for a bit. Now that macOS has been installed, we can do our initial setup just like any other Mac. I'm going to get Wi-Fi connected, sign into my Apple ID, and set my password. Okay, now we're in. macOS 10.14 Mojave is now running natively on my XPS 15. Now we're going to install Clover bootloader to our internal SSD, just like how we did it for the USB before. Download the Clover bootloader installer off the internet and launch the package. Select your internal SSD as the destination, and then select Clover for UEFI booting only, and proceed with the installation. Now that Clover is installed, we're going to mount our EFI partition with terminal, and then replace the Clover folder inside the EFI folder with our Clover folder downloaded from GitHub. After we've successfully done this, we can go ahead and remove our USB and reboot, and we should now be able to boot off the internal Clover bootloader on our SSD. As you can see, everything is working great and as expected, so we can now shut down the laptop and move on to the Windows dual boot part of this tutorial. I'm going to prepare the Windows USB on my desktop, but you can do it on any other Windows machine that you own. We're going to wipe our USB again, but this time we're going to flash the normal Windows 10 installer onto it. This is fairly straightforward. You can either use Microsoft's own Windows USB tool, or use Rufus to flash a Windows 10 ISO onto your USB. I'll be doing the latter. I've fast-forwarded this, but in real life this process could take anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes or more depending on your hardware. Once your Windows 10 installer USB is ready, go ahead and plug it into the laptop and start the installation. Now in the partition selection menu, find the exFAT partition we made earlier in macOS, then select it, hit Format, and install Windows to that partition. After Windows has finished installing and you reboot, your machine might head straight into Windows bypassing the Clover bootloader. To rectify this and get Clover bootloader back, go back into BIOS, boot sequence, and delete all boot options, then create a new boot option named Clover, and navigate to your SSD's EFI, and select cloverx64.efi. Now you can apply the BIOS settings and reboot, and you should now be greeted by Clover and the option to boot into either macOS or Windows. If you want to see how my XPS 15 Hackintosh works under macOS, make sure to see the last video where I demonstrate its capabilities and performance under macOS. This concludes the Hackintosh dual boot tutorial. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hit subscribe and like the video for more content like this. Special thanks goes out to Wondershare for sponsoring this video. Check out PDF Element for your Mac PDF needs. And also check out my electronic EP Cold Nights by Nivek Fours if you enjoyed the music used in this video. Thanks!